Hey everybody, today we're talking about ABRSM Grade 2 Timpani Solo Space Race. This is a really fun piece. I love learning this piece. It is by composer Andrew J. Smith. Well done, Mr. Smith. This is a fun one. And the first thing we do with timpani, as always, we've got to figure out what pitches we're playing so that we can tune our drums. And today marks a really important step in our ABRSM journey. This is the first time we've had pitches other than A and D. All of our solos prior to this have had A and D, but today, as you can see written there in the first measure, in G and C. All right, we have two new notes. Now, it's nice that they've told us G and C, but we don't know which one's which until we read bass clef. All right, in the pickup to the first measure, we can see 2/16 notes on that bottom line, and we all read bass clef well by now. And we know that bottom line is a G. G, B, D, F, A are our lines. And in the first full measure, we have a half note on the second space from the bottom. And we know our spaces are A, C, E, G. So that note is our C. That tells us our low note is the G and our high note is the C. So we know how to tune. Now, you may have noticed that I have 3 drums in front of me when we only need 2 pitches. I've done that because we as timpanists typically find ourselves behind 4 drums, 3 or 4 drums, and we have to make decisions about where we put those pitches. Prior to this, we have put A and D on our 2 middle drums, A and D. That's what we've done so far. Today, I'm going to put our G on my lowest drum and my C right here. Now, this is not something that I can give you an exact answer to every time. Your situation is different, your drums are different, but it's very important that you ask your teacher or ask your colleagues about these sorts of things if you think, I'm not really sure which drum to put that on, because each drum will have a little bit different character, and I would encourage you to try a G on your low drum and then try a G on this drum and listen to the difference between the two. And you'll hear different characters. You hear each one has its own sort of unique sound quality. And that's why we choose different drums to put different pitches on. Okay, now that we've talked about that, let's talk about tuning the drums. Same process as always. We want to get something that puts a pitch into our ear. We really hear it. We take that time to listen to it. Today, we've got a tone bar. I'm going to play this G for us. Now we're going to take the pedal all the way to the bottom. Really hear that G. I'm going to play it one more time. Then I'm going to tap the drum. We're going to slowly slide the pedal up, slowly, until it matches the sound of the tone bar. There we go. There's our G. I'm going to do the same thing with the C. Take the pedal all the way to the bottom. Really listen to the C. There we go. Fantastic. I think you should practice that every time you step in front of the timpani, using a pitch pipe or a piano or a glockenspiel, whatever you can do to practice tuning the timpani is really helpful. Now, the next thing I like to do, check out our time signature. We know how to read time signatures by now. We're very good at this. 2/4, top note tells us how many beats we have per measure. 2, bottom note tells us what kind of notes those are. Quarter notes, we have 2 quarter notes per bar. Okay? Next, we like to look at all the instructions the composer's given us, because this is what helps us determine what is this piece about? What are we trying to communicate when we're playing this piece? And the first word he writes above that measure, the first measure, is menacing. That's a great word, menacing. Menacing is a real intimidating, almost evil. It can be evil. I think about it, if you think about it in a comic book situation, the villain is typically a menacing character who relentlessly pursues the good guy and is after them. So menacing, yeah, a real intimidating sort of evil sort of feeling, okay? Now, the title of the piece, Space Race, also gives us some images, right? Space Race might put you in the Star Wars realm or the Star Trek, if you're a Trekkie or a Star Wars person. Just puts you in that sort of environment of outer space, lots of spaceships and laser beams and things. It's really cool. I love this piece. You'll hear it. You'll hear the Space Race once we kick in. All right. Right next to menacing, our composer has written quarter note equals 88. So here's 88 for us, so we get an idea of the tempo that the composer wants us to go. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and a 1, 2, 1 and 2 and a 1, 2, 1 and. Okay, so we've got a good idea of our tempo. Now what I like to do is check out our dynamics and go through each bar and look for any sort of special instructions along the way. We're going to start off forte, quite strong. Du-du-dun. Okay, it's quite an introduction, right? Du-du-dun. And one thing I will say about that, when you play this one, is you're going to have a tendency to want to play and 1 and really go for the 1. I will caution you against that. You've got the low drum, which requires a little bit more heft to play. I would think more about playing the G's bigger and relaxing a little bit on that C, okay? It's going to be kind of opposite of what we are kind of taught at the beginning, but trust me, that's the way you want to think. This big note, this C will speak very clearly. We want to dig out that G just a little bit. Okay, forte through the whole first line. In measure 7, we have a crescendo to fortissimo. Here is something else I'd like to point out. This is what a really great musician, David McGill, bassoonist of the Chicago Symphony, once taught me. He taught me about the fishbowl technique. And oftentimes in this situation, we're crescendoing from forte to fortissimo, which is not a great deal of crescendo, and it just sort of sounds like maybe you've accidentally gotten a little louder. So what happens when we see these crescendos sometimes is that we back off a little bit so that we can reapproach it and come a little further. And he calls it the fishbowl technique, and the idea of the fish going to the edge of the glass and then backing off and then coming right back to it. That's the idea, that we're at forte, and when we hit measure 7, we're going to back off just a little bit so that our crescendo is more effective, okay? Not all the way down to pianissimo or anything, but just back off enough. Carrying on, 7, 8, 9, we have a measure of rest. We're going to mute right there. We're going to mute, D, D, do, D, do, 2, 1, and now we've got a big roll. And I do these left hand to right hand, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. You can do whatever you need to as long as we land on 1 at the right time, and each note just progressively louder than the other. Lift, 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 lift to 1. And now I'm also going to mute here. We have 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, we're going to mute in the 1 and the bar after it, okay? Here we are at 15, 16, piano, we're going to be really quiet. 2, 1, and a 2E. Now, we've got this neat little rhythm, 1 and a 2E, 1 and a 2E, 1E. Now, there's an accent on beat 2. With timpani, to get a nice accent, you've got to lift and play from a much higher height to get an accent. I feel that sometimes we've got to exaggerate our accents a little bit on timpani. If you can notice, I'm almost going twice the height of the stick to really get that accent. It just requires a little bit extra to get that accent to speak, okay? Next line, 21, 22, 23, another little accent, and 2E, and 2E, and 2E. Sorry, it's and 1E, and 1E, 2, and 1, and 1E, okay? And then we have those 4 little letters, C-R-E-S-C, which we all know is short for crescendo. We're gonna crescendo for 1, 2, 3 bars until 27, when we're back to forte, strong. We're gonna play strong through that line. We're gonna get to measure 33, right? 31, 32, 33. We've got this crescendo. I wanna practice the fishbowl technique again, okay? And that, we're gonna play and 1 and 2 E and 1 E and 2 and 1, okay? So once we get there, we've been playing forte, we're gonna back off just a little bit on beat 1, and we're gonna grow to fortissimo, okay? You'll hear it, if you listen closely to the performance, you'll hear quite clearly what we've done there. Finally, in that last measure, the 2 last measures, we're gonna mute 1, 2, and a 1, okay? We're gonna cut that quite short. You can make that decision yourself with the pianist when you're playing this with a pianist. Because I played this with marimbas and they don't sustain as quite as long, I feel like it's warranted to really mute that and play it quite short. And a 1, maybe with a piano you might feel more comfortable to let it ring. That's a decision that you get to make. Okay, now I think we are ready for our play along. Okay, now we're ready for our play along. The thing we're gonna do before every timpani play along, we're gonna remind ourselves of 2 things. 1 is our playing spot. Remember, we're gonna make this pizza. We're aiming to be very consistent about where we play on the drum, okay? Not all over the place. We're gonna be really trying to make sure that we're staying in the same spot. And in this case, with the 2 drums to our left, or right if you're playing German system, we've got this, and we've got this one. So here's our 2 lugs, and here's our 2 lugs. So we're aiming for these 2 spots here. We're gonna try to keep that as consistent as possible, okay? The other thing we're gonna think about is lift, lift, lift. I'll never stop saying that. We wanna avoid playing down into the drum, and what we wanna do is simply drop our sticks and bring them right back to where they belong. This is home, okay? This is away, this is home. We'll bring it back home, okay? Now for the purposes of this play along, I'm not gonna play the big fortes and stuff. I'm gonna keep it quite quiet because it sort of interferes with the microphones while I'm talking. But I think you'll get the idea, and there's plenty of play alongs that you can listen to. We're gonna go much slower. We're gonna go quarter note equals 72 here. We're gonna count along and make sure we really count our rests and that we subdivide to make sure all those 16th notes are very even. Here we are. 1, 2, a 1, 2, ready, play, and a 1, 2, and 1, and 2, and a 1, 2, and 1, and 2, and 2, and 2, and start over here. Mute, 2, and 1, 2, 1, 2, and mute, 2, and 1, 2, 1, 2, and mute, 2, and 1, and 2. 2 and 1, 1 E and a 2, and 1 and 2, and accent, 2 and 1, crescendo, 1 E, a 2, and 1 and 2, and 1 and 2, and 1 and 2, 1 E, a 2, and 1 and 1 and 2, and start over here, 1, 2, and a 1. Okay, again, I cut that last note a little bit shorter than it's written just because of the marimbas. That's a decision you can make with your pianist. And again, remembering to start over on those crescendos, fishbowl technique. So one more time, I will start measure the pickup to measure 5 at the very top. 1 and 2. Okay, that one might have been a little bit drastic, but that's the idea you want. You want to start those things over so that your crescendo is more effective. This is such a fun piece. As always, there'll be one more play along. I will count you in, and you can play along with me and the accompaniment. And as always, you can download the audio for this. You can just plug the accompanying track without timpani right into your device and listen along and have a lot of fun playing with that. If you have any questions, as always, please send me one, and we'll talk, and I'll see you later. Bye.
1, 2, 1, 2, ready, play.